Welcome to the YouTube channel for my new book, Seeded Israel, DNA Guide to Tracing Your Jewish Ancestry, available on Amazon in ebook and paperback versions. Links to order your copy are below. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button to get more videos like this. In this video, I'm going to pose a question that I actually really don't have the answer for, and maybe you do. And if you can provide some insight, it'd be great if you could add it in the comment sections and create a discussion, because I think this is a really interesting topic that's very relevant, especially in today's discussions about genetics and DNA and ancestry, particularly in regards to Ashkenazi Jews. So basically, I'm trying to determine why Ashkenazi Jews are genetically close to Greeks and Italians. Now, from my own research, and I'm going to go over this a little bit, there is no evidence of mass conversions of ancient Greeks and Romans, either in the land of Israel or in the Mediterranean Diaspora. There certainly were Graeco-Roman proselytes, but the research doesn't show that there were many of them. Now, there is the theory that converted women, possibly in northern Italy during the medieval era, married Middle Eastern Jewish men. But I don't know, to me that theory makes even less sense because of the restrictions of Christianity compared to the paganism of ancient Rome and Greece. Now, I was told that the Western Roman Empire, sort of right before it moved to the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople, Byzantium, moved north to northern Italy in the Po Valley region. So possibly if the Jews had migrated to northern Italy in an earlier period, maybe these women were pagan in northern Italy before Christianity. So that's a possibility. But anyway, I did post this on social media, on Facebook, and I did get some responses, and I'll just quickly go over some of them. I'm not going to name who commented on this, but somebody commented that there's some speculation, e.g. Yigel Yadin, that there is a significant Aegean component in the Israelite population, both in the tribe of Dan, the Sea people, Danyen, a Latinized Greek Dani, maybe Naphtali and assimilated Philistines. This is related to the Greek substrate Pelasgians, as well as the Etruscans in Italy, both with a possible origin in Anatolia. And so he says this is from archaeology and somewhat from linguistics. He's not sure about genetics. He also says there's a Minoan association with the Hyksos in Avaris, as well as in Israel itself. For Avaris, he said, see Manfred Bietak. And he says that there's clearly an admixture in ancient Israel from the Habaru with a Hurrian component to an Egyptian component, the Levites, as well as Neo-Hittites, not to mention later Greek settlers, especially in the Galilee in the late Second Temple period, where they mingled with the Jewish population. The Galilee population was a significant contribution to the general population. It says there were simply more of them compared to the Judeans. And so somebody else posted that, commented that Israel was ruled by the Greek and Roman Italian empires for more than 400 years. So maybe the influence was genetic-wise. And then somebody else pointed out that in the Mishnah, it's understood that a smaller number of Greeks and Romans converted at various times and assimilated into community. And again, we know this from the Mishnah. And he says from the examples are from the Greco-Roman religion, Aquila of Sinope, Axilas from traditional Greek religion, Paulina Beturia from traditional Roman religion, Flavia Domitia from traditional ancient Roman religion, possibly to Jewish Christianity, as she is also a Christian saint. Titus Flavius Clemens, consul, great nephew of the Roman Emperor Vespasian, from traditional Roman religion, possibly to Jewish Christianity, as he's also a Christian saint. Fulvia, wife of Emperor Tiberius's close friend Saturninus, from traditional Roman religion. Onkelos, a Hebrew scholar and translator from ancient Roman religion. And then I had another commentator, which when I posted this, posed this question on Facebook, who said, keep in mind that just before the center of Roman influence changed from Italy to Constantinople through Constantine and others, Christianity was heavily persecuted, and the administrative center of the Roman Empire was in the Po Valley of northern Italy. The plains of the lower Po extended down the calf of Italy to the ankle of Italy. Says, I think it was mentioned that there was a sizable Jewish population that was set up in the area either voluntarily or under some duress after the Bar Kokhba revolt was put down. That would have been in 135 CE. And so, according to Wikipedia, it says the Po Valley for a time hosted the capital of the Western Roman Empire in Mediolanum from 286 to 403, and then in Ravenna until its political collapse. It was attacked in the 3rd century by Germanic tribes, bursting through the Alps, and sacked 2 centuries later by Attila the Hun. So, I'm going to just demonstrate from a couple academic sources and a couple articles why there possibly were conversions, but there weren't many. So again, I just still think it's an open question as to why Ashkenazi Jews in particular are, and my results certainly show that we have a genetic affinity to Southern Europeans, such as Southern Italians, Sicilians, Maltese, and also Greek islanders, such as Cretans, the Dodecanese, the Peloponnese, all the Greek islands in the Aegean and elsewhere, and then also from Cyprus, Cypriots. So very, very a lot of genetic affinity with Mediterranean islanders and Southern Europeans, particularly from Greece and Italy. But where does that come from? Does that is that from antiquity? Is that from the Middle Ages? The modern period? Or is that sort of just like where we plot in PCA, because maybe we have some French ancestry, and then we are from the Levant, the Levantine ancestry, and is that sort of the in-between there, where we would plot between the Levant and, let's say, France? And then there's also what I've talked about before, the Rhineland theory of Jewish migration from Israel to Italy, southern Italy, Apulia, up the boot of Italy to Rome and Lucca, and then from northern Italy and to southern France. Some went to southern France from Italy, but basically from northern Italy to the Rhineland Pfalz, Rhineland Palatinate, the Rhine Valley, France and Germany, and then eastward to other areas of Central Europe, Bohemia, Austria, Bavaria, those kinds of places in Central Europe, and then Silesia, sort of Eastern Germany, Western Poland, and then into the core of Poland, to Central Poland, and then all over Eastern Europe. So, but yeah, I mean, we would have picked up some DNA along the way. Obviously, our origins are Middle Eastern, but we would have picked up some DNA, but it's apparently most of that DNA could have been from sort of Greco-Roman type admixture from Italy and Greece. So I'm just going to quote here from a book titled, How to Interpret Family History and Ancestry DNA Test Results for Beginners, the Geography and History of Your Relatives. And I'm going to leave links to all these sources below. And it says, mostly the admixture was between, this is talking about the Jews of antiquity during the Roman period. It says, mostly the admixture was between mobile Jewish communities. As the Jewish population left the Levant after 70 CE, they set up villages at intermediate locations along the way from the Mediterranean to northeastern Europe. After traveling through the Levant, Anatolia, and Greece, they sailed to Italy. At that time, 70 CE, Rome had a large Jewish population, and some Romans and Greeks converted to Judaism, especially those living among Jewish communities or living in Roman colonies and villas in Palestine during the time of Roman rule. And then I'm just going to quote here another excerpt from another section of the book, which states that when the Romans conquered Palestine and built their villas and cities there, you get gene inflow from the Romans and some Greeks. So, okay, so let's just say, let's just theorize here. What if that, let's say the Judeans that, were either taken as slaves to Rome or migrated there in an earlier time as merchants and traders to Rome, to Italy, that formed the basis of the Ashkenazi foundation in Italy. Well, what if they were already mixed with Greco-Roman types from the land of Israel? And there is some indication that is a possibility. So they were already sort of a mixed population by the time they already got to Italy. And there have been archaeological excavations that have been done in the land of Israel that have found these evidence of these Roman villas. And late last year, there was a new discovery, and I'll post a link to this below. And the title of this article is 1700-year-old Roman villa excavator uncover in Lod, Israel. And it says that excavators found a 1700-year-old mosaic that once decorated a luxurious Roman villa in Lod, known in Roman times as Diospolis, or City of Zeus. It says the discovery was made during archaeological excavations carried out in the past month by the Israel Antiquities Authority in preparation for the construction of a visitor center in Lod that will exhibit mosaics exposed several years ago at the site. And I guess it was originally discovered in 1996, and it was a luxurious villa dating to, the mosaics date to the 4th century CE. So, yeah, we found evidence from Mediterranean luxury that characterized the Roman Empire, including attributes such as fresco wall paintings. So, there's just a lot of evidence there, archaeological evidence, historical records, and possibly genetic evidence that, the Greeks and the Romans, possibly mixed with the native Jews. The Western Roman Empire ruled Israel from 63 BCE to 313 CE, followed by the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, controlling Israel until 636 CE. And before the Romans, it was the Greeks who conquered Israel, starting in 332 BCE with Alexander the Great. So that's a long time for the Greeks and the Romans to be basically controlling the land of Israel. So, it would make sense that there would be some, not a lot, but some proselytism, some conversions of these Greeks and Romans to Judaism, and they would just join the Jewish people. So, and this is from an article called History of Jewish Conversion by David Aberbach, professor of Jewish Studies at McGill University in Montreal. And he said, the Oxford scholar Martin Goodman has written that conversion to Judaism was unique in the ancient world, as converts were accepted as equals by Jews. He said many spiritually hungry pagans drawn to Judaism by its moral code, its valuation of human life and charity, and hope of messianic salvation, adopted Jewish customs, particularly the Sabbath and the dietary laws. But Judaism spread also among upper-class Romans. Privileges granted to the Jews by Julius Caesar encouraged proselytization, freedom from emperor worship and army service, as well as the right to congregate as a religious group. According to the historian Louis Feldman, conversion was the single most important issue on which the emperors legislated in the entire history of Roman-Jewish relations. And it says, I mentioned this before about the Mishnah, but it says the Midrash takes pride in legends that famous Romans, such as Nero, converted to Judaism. Some of the most eminent Talmudic rabbis, including Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir, were allegedly descended from converts. Their Jewishness was not questioned. In any case, many biblical characters, including the children of Moses and Solomon, were born to foreign women. Acceptance of Judaism was a private matter for the convert, not a public process fixed by religious authorities. The temple was a site of pilgrimage and sacrifice, not just for Jews, but also for many others who were drawn to Jewish religious and national distinctiveness. And says, prior to the destruction of the temple, there seems to have been no unified standard of conversion, no refusal to accept conversions or prolongation of the process. On the contrary, the often violent rivalry between Judaism and Greco-Roman culture meant that conversion to Judaism could be seen as a sign of superiority. So it says, Judaism reached the peak of its expansion in the years prior to the 66 CE revolt. Salo-Baron, in his monumental A Social and Religious History of the Jews, pointed out that the Jews, comprising as many as 10% of the Western Roman Empire and 20% of the Eastern Roman Empire, were seen by Rome as a threat to the unity of the Roman Empire, whose universal culture was Greek, not Jewish. Too rapid expansion, concludes Baron, had endangered Judaism, for it had, quote, made too many compromises and flirted with too many alien ways of life and thought. The results were those sharp sectarian and political divisions which had almost brought it to the brink of extinction. It says the Roman-Jewish wars led to depopulation of Jews both in the land of Israel and the diaspora, and the Jews turned into a homeless, persecuted, semi-pariah people until the modern period. And it says the Jewish perception of conversion changed as the forces which brought about the expansion of Judaism also contributed to Greco-Roman anti-Semitism and ultimately the destruction of the Jewish state. After the final disastrous Jewish war against Rome, the Bar Kokhba revolt from 132 to 135 CE, Jewish leaders were no longer kings and politicians, the temple priests and messianic warriors, but rabbis dedicated to the survival of the Jewish people and Judaism in the Roman Empire. The Romans approved or organized rabbinic authority as the rabbis regarded Torah study, not proselytization and anti-Roman messianic militancy as the highest good, essential to Jewish survival. The rabbis dealt with the Roman ban on Jewish proselytization and the continued attraction of Judaism by making the process of conversion harder and warning of the hazards of Judaism. Quote, what is your motive, unquote, they would ask the prospective convert. Quote, don't you know that Israel is suffering, persecuted, oppressed, harassed, and beaten down with multitudes of sorrows? Unquote. The Talmud tells of the nephew of Titus, destroyer of the temple, who raises Titus from the dead to ask if he should convert to Judaism. Quote, their laws are so hard, quote, unquote, Titus replies, quote, you won't be able to keep them, unquote. Judaism survived by turning inward, strengthening its laws and customs, retaining its universalist outlook, but leaving missionary monotheism to Christianity and later Islam. Only since the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, when German reform began, has Judaism regained some of its variety, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it says, Tisha B'Av reminds us that communal disunity and strife can be fatal, and converts might justly be warned as in the past. Judaism remains a target for anti-Semites, and Jews continue to suffer vilification, though not on the scale of the past. And this is from a journal article, Conversion to Judaism and Classical Antiquity, by Louis H. Feldman, Hebrew Union College Annual, Volume 74, 2003, published by Hebrew Union College Press. And Louis H. Feldman is from Yeshiva University. And the abstract of the paper says the paper analyzes the evidence for the tremendous increase in the number of Jews between 586 BCE and the 1st century CE. While it finds no conclusive evidence for actual proselytizing, since we have no missionary tracts and know of no missionaries, it concludes that it is most likely that this increase, both in the land of Israel and the diaspora, was occasioned by voluntary conversion to Judaism. The major evidence for this increase is to be found in Josephus, whose reliability in this matter, especially in the figure that he gives for the number of Jews who came to Jerusalem for Passover in the year 66, is defended by the author. Evidence for the eagerness to accept proselytes may be found in the character of Abraham, as depicted in Midrashic literature, as well as Philo, especially in his account of the translation of the Pentateuch into Greek, in the New Testament, and in various Greek and Roman non-Jewish writers, notably Strabo, Horace, Seneca, Juvenal, and Tacitus. People were attracted to Judaism for various reasons, especially economic advantages. Women in particular were attracted. And so it says, you know, there's no statistics as the actual number of converts that happen. that were to Judaism, nor do we have the memoir of there's not even a memoir of a single convert. It says, nor do we have any propaganda specifically directed at converts, nor do we know of a single professional missionary. So we know the name of very few converts. The evidence is inferential, based on the apparent, with emphasis on the word apparent, since we are far from having actual numbers, growth in the number of Jews, based on a number of literary statements indicating the welcome that Jews extended to proselytes and the bitter opposition on the part of some Gentiles opposed to the movement. In other words, the evidence, though substantial, is circumstantial. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically saying, we don't have hard evidence that there were these proselytes in antiquity. So it's all kind of circumstantial. And there's certainly no indications of any kind of mass conversions of the Greeks and the Romans. So, there's still a lot of question marks. And it says, this is from the book, The Jews of Italy, Antiquity, by Shlomo Simonson. And he says, similar to the conversion to Judaism and classical antiquity, which I just quoted from. And it says, as often before, Philo of Alexandria and Josephus are the principal sources cited on conversion to Judaism in pagan times, followed by literary and legal sources, imperial rescripts, and sundry others. Inscriptions in Italy are not much to go by, since converts are mentioned in them just over half a dozen times, about 1% of the total, though the mentions are more numerous outside Italy. The views of Roman authors on Jews and Judaism, favorable or unfavorable, more or less balance each other out. The number of punishments meted out to the Jews of Rome and Italy for spreading Judaism in pagan times is few. This is by far outweighed by the toleration of Judaism by the pagan Roman Empire. But all that is not proof of Jewish missionary zeal. In fact, it demonstrates the opposite. The few times that Jews were penalized for spreading Judaism, no more than 2 or 3 times in the course of several centuries, it should go a long way to show up the relative rarity of Jewish missionary efforts. That includes even those that were intended to nip the Jewish mission in the bud. Philo praises converts to Judaism, but does not encourage conversion or call for a missionary drive. Josephus, in his pervasive motif of apologetic defense of Judaism, does the same, and is particularly eager to show that high-ranking Romans were attracted to Judaism, but no more than that. Under Christianity, conversion to Judaism became a capital offense. So in the end, one tends to subscribe to the view that while some conversions did take place, especially in pagan times, they were not a mass movement, and hence did not affect Jewish population figures in antiquity more than marginally, depriving inflated Jewish population figure estimates of one of their mainstays. So, yeah, so basically, and then there's this study that came out in 2013, which is kind of controversial, and which was questioned by a 2014 study in terms of the mtDNA haplogroups, which is study basically concluded that most come from Europe, and the other study said that the 2014 study said these mtDNA haplogroups, the results are inconclusive, and we need to do more DNA samples from ancient Near Eastern populations. But basically, the study it's titled A Substantial Prehistoric European Ancestry Among Ashkenazi Maternal Lineages. And so it basically concludes that likely that, Jewish men, probably Middle Eastern origin, married Italian convert wives. But again, the results were sort of controversial, and they've been questioned, not by just that 2014 study, but by other geneticists. But it does give an interesting history there. It says, Jewish communities were already spread across the Greco-Roman and Persian world over 2,000 years ago. It is thought that a substantial Jewish community was in Rome from at least the mid-century BCE, maintaining links to Jerusalem and numbering 30,000 to 50,000 by the first half of the first century CE. By the end of the first millennium CE, Ashkenazi communities were historically visible along the Rhine Valley in Germany. After the wave of expulsions of Western Europe during the 15th century, they began to disperse once more into Eastern Europe. So again, even though the mtDNA results have been questioned, or conclusions have been questioned by the study, it does align with the Rhineland theory, which I'm very much an advocate for, and completely discredits the Khazar theory for Ashkenazi Jews. And again, the Rhineland theory from Israel to Italy to the Rhineland to Eastern Europe. And it says these analyses suggest that the first major wave of assimilation probably took place in Mediterranean Europe, most likely in the Italian peninsula around 2,000 years ago, with substantial further assimilation of minor founders in West Central Europe. There is less evidence for assimilation in Eastern Europe, and almost none for a source in the North Caucasus, Chuvashia, as would be predicted by the Khazar hypothesis. Rather, the results show strong genetic continuities between West and East European Ashkenazi communities, albeit with gradual declines of frequency of founders between East and West. And so, yeah, so at least it discredits the Khazar theory, which again should be put in the dustbin of history. Even though, again, the other results are questionable. So, yeah, so basically, there's no question that Ashkenazi Jews have a genetic affinity with Southern Europeans in addition to Levantine Middle Eastern people and other Western Diaspora Jews, as I've stated repeatedly. And within that, the Southern Europeans were very close to, again, Southern Italians, Sicilians, Maltese, Greeks, particularly Cretans, other Greek islanders, and again, Cypriots and Levantine Middle Eastern people. But basically, the question is, like, when did Ashkenazi Jews or Proto-Ashkenazi Jews, Jews in the Mediterranean Diaspora, is that where we got the Graeco-Roman type admixture from Italy and Greece, or was it in the land of Israel? So that I think is still an open question, and I'm just trying to explore it. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic, and yeah, maybe we can get some answers. Thanks for watching.